Hey guys, Skellington80 here. So today we are back for day 21 of 25 Days of Monsters. We're in the home stretch and there's only 4 days left, so I do hope you've been enjoying this series thus far, and if you're joining us just now, I hope you enjoy this episode and hopefully watch the 20 previous episodes that I have released during this fine spooky month. So today we have the story of Polyphemus from the Odyssey by Homer, circa 775 BC. The category is giant. Base of operations is Sicily, when, right after the Trojan War, darn it, my tongue is stupid. Powers, he's ever so much stronger than the gods. Weakness, depth perception, most dastardly deed is eating people, and fear factor is 3, even though that's kind of relative. Alright, here is the illustration for today's monster. Is it weird that he kind of looks almost cute? It must be the cheeks. I don't know. Either that or I'm weird. Anyway, that sheep looks absolutely terrified. That sheep has seen some things, I tell you. Like I've been saying for the past 20 or so days, I dig the illustrations of this book, and Tim Seibert is pretty much legendary for doing them. Alright, so, without further ado, let's begin. Ancient Greece was a land of monsters. In Thebes, there was the Sphinx. In Crete, there was the Minotaur. In the island of Sicily, reamed with cyclops. Cyclops is the plural of cyclops. Giants with one eye in the middle of their foreheads. These lawless and inhuman monsters herded sheep and goats and lived in caves. They were too savage to build ships, so they survived on mutton and cheese from the goats, and the occasional shipwrecked sailor. Mightiest amongst all the Cyclopes was godlike Polyphemus, son of the sea god Poseidon. In truth, though, he was just another cruel wretch who lived in a filthy cave with sheep dung scattered in great heaps. So, as you can see, they did not exactly value cleanliness. Okay. One day, Polyphemus had the misfortune to encounter the cunning sailor Odysseus, who was sailing back home from Troy with a boatload of his men. Odysseus had landed on the island of the Cyclopes to learn if they were uncivilized savages or a hospitable and humane race. And it turned out they were the former. When Odysseus and his men met Polyphemus, Polyphemus asked to be welcomed as a guest. And what did Polyphemus do? He grabbed 2 of Odysseus's men, bashed their heads against the floor of the cave, tore them limb from limb, and gobbled them up like a lion in the wilderness, flesh, bones, marrow, and entrails, without leaving anything uneaten. Then Polyphemus blocked the entrance to his cave with a boulder so huge that 22 strong four-wheeled wagons would not be enough to draw it from its place. Basically, they said it was really heavy, and even if you had a lot of wagons, you couldn't pull it free, and laid down to sleep. Nearby slept his flocks of enormous sheep and goats, and near them, listening to the giant's dreadful snores, trembled Odysseus and his surviving men, their hearts broken with terror. So passed the night. And in the morning, Polyphemus breakfasted on 2 more men, and then rolled away the great boulder just long enough to shoo his flocks through, and slept outside himself. He rolled it back again, and spent the day happily roaming the fields and basking in the sun. In the dark, wretched cave, Odysseus plotted. Now Odysseus was the cleverest of men, that ingenious hero, that man so ready at need, and always had a trick up his sleeve. He put his men to work there in the cave. The giant had left behind his staff, a trunk the size of the mast of a 20-oared merchant vessel, basically a really big ship, and hardening the point, and Odysseus had a 6-foot piece sliced off. Sorry, I read ahead a bit there and stumbled. Just expect me to stumble over my words. I'm not very good at reading things out loud, despite doing this for 20 days. And, his men sharpened it to a point, hardening it in the fire, and hid it under a pile of dung. Polyphemus brought his flocks back into the cave at night and supped on 2 more men. Odysseus said to him, "You have been eating a great deal of man's flesh." Pointing out that Polyphemus must be thirsty, he offered the Cyclops some wine. Polyphemus thanked him and promised to kill him last. He asked Odysseus for his name, and he lied and said, "No, man. This will come in later." Just saying. Soon Polyphemus was sleeping deeply, and Odysseus and his men dug out their filthy sphere. They heated it in the fire until it was smoldering, then plunged the hot point right into the Cyclops' one eye till the boiling blood bubbled all over it, and steam from the burning eyeball scalded his eyelids and eyebrows, and the roots of the eye sputtered in the fire. Yeesh, that's gruesome. But then again, he was kind of asking for it by eating Odysseus' men, so yeah. Polyphemus, waking, screamed through the wall of the cave, "No man is slaying me!" And the other Cyclopes, hearing this, wondered why Polyphemus was shouting about something so uninteresting, after no man was slaying them as well. Needless to say, they did not come to help. The next day, Polyphemus let his flock slip out again, but this time he sat in the cave entrance to make sure no men slipped through. But Odysseus and his men were 1 step ahead of him and rode out of the cave, clinging to the wool on the underbellies of the giant sheep. They drove the animals to their ship and sailed away, having not only stolen Polyphemus' one eye, but his flock. But as he sailed away, Odysseus made a big mistake. He shouted his real name to the raging blind Cyclops. Polyphemus begged his father Poseidon to set a vengeful sea against Odysseus and his men, and he did his work well. It would take Odysseus 10 years to get home, and all his men died along the way. Thus was Polyphemus avenged. Okay, and there's a little paragraph here that says, Sinbad and the adventure of the very same story. In some collections of the story 1001 Nights, circa 13th century, Sinbad the sailor has several adventures that closely resemble parts of the Odyssey. On his 3rd voyage, Sinbad and his men encounter a giant with one eye like a burning coal in the middle of his forehead. The giant eats people until he falls asleep, whereupon Sinbad and 8 others blind the giant with a red-hot spit made red hot in the fire. Darn it. It all sounds so familiar, doesn't it? And there's another paragraph here. Okay, this is a big word, and it looks hard to pronounce, so I'm just going to try my best. Batrachomimachia. The ancients said that Homer, after producing 2 of the great epics ever written, the Odyssey and the Iliad, turned his hand to a much sillier work. The Batrachomiomachia, or the Battle of Frogs and Mice, 4th century BC. This short parody tells of an absurd war that breaks out between the tiny creatures, and critics no longer think Homer wrote it, but it's still the best poem we have about interspecies combat. Spoiler, the mice almost defeat the frogs until their allies, the crabs, come in as reinforcement. Crabs have both natural weapons and armor. And look at this illustration. Isn't that just pretty funny? I don't know. I would like to think that he actually did write it because that's just pretty hilarious. Who says that ancient authors couldn't have senses of humor? Alright. And finally, we have the Beyond the Book section. Homer's Blooming Lyre. Rudyard Kipling, author of The Jungle Book, 1894, wrote about Homer in The Seven Seas, 1896. When Homer smote his blooming lyre, he'd heard men sing by land and sea, and what he thought he might require, he went and took, the same as me. Kipling doesn't mean that Homer was a shoplifter. He just means that Homer's stories are all old stories, and he borrowed his plots from older storytellers, just as Kipling and countless others have. They knew he stole, and he knew they knew. Darn it. They knew he stole, and he knew they knowed. That doesn't sound right, but whatever. They didn't tell nor make a fuss, but winked at Homer down the road, and he winked back, the same as us. Other literary giants. Folklore and legend are filled with ferocious giants, case in point, Jack and the Beanstalk, which is one of my favorite stories, by the way. I don't know, I'm a bit of a macrophile and can never resist a good giant story. But writers have also found giants useful for, of all things, philosophical satire. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. Gargantua by Francois Rabelais. I don't know, it's French. Rabelais in 1534. This novel was published before most people had a good idea of what novels should look like, so it's much weirder than most books you'll ever read. It is both a philosophical work and a collection of toilet jokes. And the main character, the giant Gargantua, is the source of our word gargantuan. Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift in 1726. On Gulliver's first voyage, he visits Lilliput, the land of tiny people, but his second voyage leads him to Brobdingnag, the land of giants. Although the Brobdingnagians have, as befits their size, great hearts and are wise and reasonable when compared to humans, Gulliver is obsessed with how disgusting the human body is when seen at such proportions. The giant's skin, when viewed up close, is so varied with spots, pimples, and freckles that nothing could appear more nauseous, and emits a very offensive smell. Okay, geez, that's rude. Very brazen of him to say when they could easily crush him like a fly, but whatever. Micromegas by Voltaire in 1752. Micromegas is from a planet 21,600,000 times greater in circumference than our little Earth, who tours the Milky Way. He stops at Saturn, which is hardly 9 times bigger than Earth, and the citizens of this country are dwarfs. Dwarfs in Micromegas' eyes, that is, for each Saturnian is only 6,000 feet tall. When Micromegas gets to Earth, however, he runs into trouble because his microscope can't pick up anything smaller than a whale. Okay, and that brings our story today to an end. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope you will enjoy the next 4 videos, because this series is almost coming to an end. I hope you have been having a great spooky month thus far, and hope you've been enjoying this series. So without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you next time. Bye!